Welcome to Centralia. Wait a minute, where did the town go?
Centralia is a borough in southern Columbia County in the coal region of Pennsylvania. In 1832, a man by the name of Jonathan Faust opened the Bull's Head Tavern, and eventually the town that popped up there was named Bull's Head. In 1842, the name was changed to Centerville. However, there was a naming conflict because in Schuylkill County, there was already a town with that name taken. So in 1865, it was officially changed to Centralia. It was a coal mining town due to the numerous anthracite deposits. Anthracite is the hard version of coal versus bituminous, which is the soft coal. The town reached its highest population in 1890 with 2,761 people. Unfortunately, the town was ill-fated because there was a mine fire that began, and ever since the fire, the town started being evacuated, and now it's down to approximately 5 people as of the 2020 census. The sharpest decline occurred in 1980 to 1990 with 94% decrease. It went from 1,017 people to down to 63. So, my driving excursion, I just left the borough of Ashland, where a lot of the residents fled to, and went north on Route 61. And here's the Graffiti Highway, where it begins, where the highway was closed down due to all the cracks caused by the noxious fire, the fumes from the fire. So it was turned on to the side route, and it bypasses that Graffiti Highway. I'll get a little bit more detail later on. I've been here several times in the past, but didn't really spend much time getting out and exploring, and this is the first time coming in as a horse. So I went here in October, and you can see some of the fall foliage. Although it was mostly cloudy that day, the weather still cooperated, which is always good. Now as we round the bend and go up the hill, we'll approach the other end of the Graffiti Highway. Just to the left there as I passed is the Burnsville Shrine, and again I'll go into a little bit more detail on what that is later on. So as you can see on the left there, as we approach the top of the hill, is the other end of the Graffiti Highway. And now as we come up and over, here we are Locust Avenue in the bustling metropolis of Centralia. At the top of the hill there, that church is called the Church of the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary. It's a Ukrainian Orthodox church, one of the few structures still remaining. Here we are approaching the main crossroads. Route 61 makes a left turn to head toward Mount Carmel, and Route 42 begins here. It goes straight through, and that goes up toward Aristes, Catawissa, and Bloomsburg, more communities that some of the residents moved to. So trot along with me as we explore Pennsylvania's ghost town of Centralia.
So here's where it all started. Stay right next to the Oddfellows Cemetery, just to the edge of town. And right behind me, in that area behind me there, is supposedly where the fire started. What happened was on May 27th, 1962, a bunch of firefighters, ironically, set the trash on fire behind, and unbeknownst to them, it eventually ignited a vein of coal in an abandoned mine down below. And they did that, well, they didn't set the fire to the mine every year, but they set the trash every year on fire as part of the tradition to clean things up for Memorial Day. So what happened was the vein of coal and the abandoned mine down below was set ablaze, and by the time it was discovered, it was way too late. There were efforts to dig out coal ahead of the fire to contain it, but every time they reached down to the layer where the coal was, it already was past them. They also put some fly ash, which is different materials, to try to smother out the flames, and that proved fruitless. So unfortunately, it was the beginning of the end for Centralia. So the catalyst that pretty much started the whole evacuation process was with Tom Dabowski. On February 14th of 1981, the 12-year-old Tom Dabowski was playing in his grandmother's backyard. I don't know the exact location, it was somewhere in this general vicinity, but unfortunately what happened was some subsidence occurred and he unfortunately fell into a hole caused by the mine fire. And he was fortunately able to grab onto a tree root, and then eventually his 14-year-old cousin was able to pull him out to safety. So because of that event and that life-threatening experience, the town was very, very much deeply concerned. So that's when he started talking about abandoning the town because it was just too dangerous to live here. So the site where I'm standing now is where the former St. Ignatius Catholic School stood, one of the many educational institutions here in Centralia. So as you can see, it has been demolished and abandoned, just like most of the structures here in town. So immediately across the street from the St. Ignatius School is the St. Ignatius Church. Just like every other building here, it's been unfortunately razed and abandoned, and it's no longer here. The church was built in 1869, and it was eventually demolished in 1995. So a nice long run. Right behind the St. Ignatius Church is the St. Ignatius Cemetery. And it's the largest cemetery here in Centralia, and a lot of former residents that left the town eventually made their way back home, and they permanently reside at the St. Ignatius Cemetery from now on. Right behind me is the beginning of the so-called Graffiti Highway. Where we're standing now is Stalkaz Avenue, also Pennsylvania Route 61. The original highway went straight through, and because of the fire and all the noxious gases created fractures and cracks in the road beyond the point of repair, because the fire pretty much was moving from the original cemetery at Oddfellows southward. And so this is pretty much the epicenter of the mine fire. So eventually the road had to be abandoned, and he rerouted 61 to a side road going around it. And from that point up until very recently, around 2020, a lot of people came here for recreation. They would ride their bikes and four-wheelers and motorcycles, and obviously a lot of people spray painted graffiti, hence the name. Then around 2020, the authorities put mounds of dirt there to ward people off the highway, and so it's pretty much a distant memory now. All right, here we are at the Graffiti Highway. As you can see, it's no longer a highway, it's just a long row of piles and mounds of dirt. So no more graffiti, no more highway. Right now we're standing at the corner of Locust Avenue and South Street, and this is the site of John Coddington's gas station. In 1979, he went to measure the fuel level underground, so he used a dipstick and he noticed that the dipstick was very hot to the touch. So he went ahead and took the temperature, and it topped out at a whopping 172 degrees Fahrenheit. Obviously, this caused great concern, and because of basically the potential for the fuel to ignite, combust, and eventually possibly explode, he had to shut down his gas station. And this was the last gas station here in Centralia. All right, now we're standing at the corner of Park Street and Locust Avenue. This is where the park used to be, hence today Park Street. You can see that the stone walls and gate is still here, but that's pretty much the only remnant. So this is where, like I said, the park was, and there was also a time capsule that was buried here. It was buried in 1866, and it was planned to be opened in 2016. However, the townspeople went ahead and dug it up in 2014, I believe, from what I understand, for just basically to avoid any vandals or anything like that happening, or maybe they were just impatient, who knows. So, also at this site, there used to be an old bench, and this is where, there used to be a bench here, and this is where John Lokitis would often maintain and paint it. And John Lokitis, I'll get a little bit more detail later on, he was one of the last remaining residents here, and he was featured in the 2007 documentary, The Town That Was. Alright, we walked a little bit farther down Park Street, and in the plot of land right behind me was where George Lokitis' home was. George Lokitis was the grandfather of John Lokitis. The Lokitis family were immigrants from Lithuania. And so eventually John ended up purchasing the home from his grandfather, and he lived here up until not too long ago, and he was one of the last remaining residents here. He was featured in the late 2000s documentary, The Town That Was, and he would take people on a tour around town and talk about old stories of where this used to be and where that used to be. And also, the plot of land, he would actually mow, he would maintain a lot of the town's property. He would hang up Christmas lights and decorations around the holiday season. He would, every day he would open and close the cemetery gates of St. Ignatius. So he really roughed it out, but unfortunately, he was eventually forced to leave his house because of eminent domain and all that other thing. Now, despite him leaving, some of the other residents fought it in court, and he ended up winning. And so the state agreed that they are allowed to stay in their property for the remainder of their days, and then the state would basically acquire their land afterwards. Alrighty, now we rounded the corner, and now we're on Troutwine Street. Now, the house right behind me is where the former mayor, Lamar Mervine, used to live. He was one of the last residents, and he toughed it out to his last living days. And he had a lot of strong opinions regarding the fire, regarding the situation, and I believe he was one of the people that ascribed to, like, the town could be rescued, it could be repopulated in the future. Unfortunately, that never came to fruition. It's pretty much a done deal now. But as you can see, there's still people living there today, roughing it out, and yeah, sticking it out to the very end. Alright, and this overgrown plot of land behind me, believe it or not, is where the high school used to be. Yeah, there used to be open land with a giant building, halls of education. Just like with everything else in the town, it's no more. Alrighty, now we are here at Railroad Avenue, and as you might guess, this is where the railroad used to be. Right behind me in this general vicinity is where the railroad station stood. It was built in 1865 and continued running until 1967. Again, just like with everything else, it was abandoned and demolished. Alright, here we are in downtown Centralia, the sprawling metropolis. Or maybe not so much. So this is the crossroads of Route 61 and 42. If you head south, it goes to Ashland. If you head 61 this way, it's actually a westbound direction. It goes about Carmel. 42 starts here, goes north toward Catawissa and Bloomsburg. And then there's a Big Mine Road, I believe it's called. It goes eastbound and then makes a sharp turn south. And it meets up with Route 54 east of Ashland. Anyway, we're upstate now every year around the Christmas time. The town puts up a nativity scene, and it's really nice to see that. So here we are at the intersection of Locust Avenue and Center Avenue at the center of town. Right behind me is the Speed Spot, which was the last remaining business here in Centralia. It was owned by David Lamb, and he sold motorcycles and bicycles. Unfortunately, the place got fired mysteriously, I believe in the year 2002, and unfortunately burnt to the ground. So it suffered the same fate as most of the structures here in Centralia. So, over here is one of the last remaining structures in Centralia. It's the municipal building and fire hall, and it's still standing to this day, as you can see. In addition, this is where they would have community events and town hall meetings, especially during the height of the whole Centralia evacuation back in the 1980s. So a lot of the political bigwigs from like Harrisburg and Washington DC would come up here, and the citizens would voice their concerns. And then just to the right of the municipal building is where the post office once stood. Now, unfortunately, as you can see, it's been razed just like a lot of buildings, and Centralia actually lost its zip code. Alright, here we are at the Burnsville Shrine. Burnsville is a small community just south of Centralia that suffered the same fate. Right behind me is a shrine built by the Riley family, it was a prominent family in this town, and a lot of religious artifacts here. Where we're standing right now is US Highway Route 122. It's no longer in commission, as you can see. This is actually looking south into Burnsville, the town that was abandoned in 1996. The reason why this road was rerouted is because of the treacherous, dangerous hills and hilly terrain, and the gradient was too steep. So they realigned the highway to curve Route 61. It goes back for a little bit, but it comes to a dead end. The remainder of the roads are no longer there because of strip mining. go. And there's an abandoned garage with the graffiti.
But alas, the wandering horse was never seen or heard from ever again.
Alright, well that's my tour of Centralia. Hope you guys enjoyed it and learned some new interesting facts. I don't know what about this town that always draws me to it and fascinates me. It's both a fascinating and tragic story. But as you see, some memories still live on to this day. Anywho, go ahead and like, comment, subscribe. This is Stalkaz. See ya!